Hello everyone, it is week 10 and it's very late in the day, but hopefully this recording will work now and you will be able to see this. So this is part 2 of this week's lecture on writing, specifically focusing on the next steps that you need to take in terms of writing your essay. I'm presuming that at this point you've selected your artists and you're starting to think about the topic in terms of the future. But one just quick point that I had the essay due date on the Queen's birthday, which would be truly atrocious. So I have extended your essay by a week and it is now due at 9 a.m. on the 15th of June, as approved by the Corgis. Okay, so I'm just going to work through a few things in relation to the essay and then talk you through the journals that you need to be thinking about. Because remember, this is a essay that's prepared for a contemporary art journal that compares and contrasts the work of two artists. But it's really important you think about the actual journal that you're pitching this for, okay? It's a short essay. You can go a little bit longer, but you can't go any shorter than 1,000 words. That would be impossible, nearly. Okay, you've chosen two artists. You've had a look at the list on Moodle. You can use other works by that artist to support your argument, but it's better to just focus on one work by each artist and use those two together to make this kind of discussion that you're making. Hot tip, I didn't say this last week and I meant to. So the example I gave last week was Lisa Rehana's Pursuit of Venus and Tracy Moffat's My Horizon, thinking about the two of them together. But I wouldn't write that as a question at the top, because I'm not writing, I don't write a research question at the top of a journal article. Instead, at the top of a journal article, I would write a title. So turn your research question into a title. So for example, based on the example I gave last week, my title would be this: My Horizon, Colonisation and Migration in Contemporary Art from Australia and Aotearoa, New Zealand. So now I've got a title, I've got my question, and a number of you have been thinking about how you find good theoretical writing. Like, where is this stuff? Where do we get it from? Use the library databases. They're getting more and more user-friendly. But in particular, look at the recommended journals themselves. The journals that we're talking about and using in this subject are the ones that you're going to be writing in, and there will be other writing in them that you can refer to, which gives you a really nice kind of way to link into the journal that you're talking about. Go back to that early list of art historians and theorists that we looked at in, I think, week 2. And lastly, open your book. You all should have Gilda Williams's book safe at home on your desk. If you open it, you will find that at the back she has these fantastic lists of theoretical writing. So she has them grouped in terms of overviews, art that is about thinking into the 21st century, or art that's, or articles that are about connecting to philosophy. Use any of the references that she has given you. They are all good. Or most of these articles that she's given you, or essays that she's given you here, are available through the library. So you should be able to put these things together. But remember, in the context of contemporary art, blogs are great. So look at the blogs. There's a big list of blogs on our Moodle page already, but there's also this list of blogs in Gilda Williams's book, and use these to start thinking things through in terms of your work. Now remember, last week I found these two articles. I found those by going through the library website and doing some keyword searches. So you really need to just spend some time doing once you've decided on your artworks, do these keyword searches. And in particular, find out what the artist themselves says about their work, but don't use this as the only source for the work. Remember, this is just one voice that helps you think the work through. So you need the artist's voice, you need the voice of reviewers. Reviews of the exhibitions will help you with your critique. And you need to actually spend a bit of time doing your own descriptions. Now you'll remember this worksheet on formal analysis. You need to find this again and you need to go back into it and you need to sit with your 2 works and once again tick off every single one of these things. Take the time to think through the work. Take the time to make sure you know if, for example, something is a print or a painting. Is it, what size is it? Can you walk inside it? Are there other people involved? Are there animals involved? Is it only virtual? You need to think through all of these things first and work through those. Now, you'll also find me talking about these 2 things, thick description and critique, and that we are looking for these in your essays. So thick description is a phrase that comes from an anthropologist called Clifford Geertz, and the phrase is about the way that material culture, in our context artworks, are a way of reading a society like a text. So the artworks that we look at can tell us something about society. Now, this approach of art and society being closely intermeshed has been critical to our whole subject. You know, I keep talking about context, context, context. Contemporary art is about the context of now. So read the artworks in a way that helps you to tell us something about now. So any society is its works of culture, is its art objects. So this is what thick description does, is it brings together and pulls together the artwork and the social and cultural contexts to help us understand a little bit more about the world. Critique, which is this other word that you will hear a lot, is about bringing that analysis together with description and then adding in interpretation. Now, interpretation comes right at the end because you're interpreting the work based on your analysis, based on your thick description, and then you can start to give us an interpretation that will help us understand something about the relationship between this artwork and the future. Okay, I really hope that you've read your whole way through Gilda Williams's book now and that you're pulling out bits that are useful. But remember, she is also a writer herself who writes about art. So here's an article that she wrote for Frieze in 2015 that's talking about Hal Foster, that's talking about Hal Foster and the way that Hal Foster adds this idea of the post-critical into how we think about and engage with art. The post-critical, according to Williams, is about the way that the art world has gone beyond this narrowly constructed language and now is thinking about itself in these broader social and cultural contexts. So the post-critical means moving beyond fixed, closed language and actually starting to engage with a broader analysis of society. And this is exactly what we're asking you to do and to think about. Okay. So next, I just want to do a quick run through of these suggested journals. If there's another journal you want to use, please email me and ask me, but I'd much rather you used one of these. I've chosen them because they are a range of styles and a range of voices, and that's what I'm going to talk about now. They're also all pretty much accessible online or through the library, so you should be able to find a copy of these and access them, look at how they're laid out, look at the kinds of artists that they're talking about, and work from that. Okay, Art Forum. Art Forum has been going since 1962. It's American. Most of the important critical ideas in the art world were published in Art Forum first. So it's where critical new ideas arrive. It has in-depth studies of international artists. So if you're interested in engaging with international artists, then this is where you should be aiming your writing for. It's a good place for theoretical references as well as really authoritative articles. The articles that Art Forum prints are the ones that determine and decide what's happening next in the art world itself. So as Sarah Thornton says, Art Forum is to art what Vogue is to fashion. which should give you a sense of how it works. Next up on our list is Aesthetica. If you're interested in using lots of images, if you're interested in that kind of focus on art and culture in photography, then this might be the journal that you should be looking at and thinking about. Aesthetica describes itself as intelligent, beautiful, and informative. So if that's the angle that you're going for your writing, then this is the journal for you. In particular, it's really good for essays that want to connect between art and culture and fashion and photography. It works with an attention-grabbing kind of language. You're interested, if you're writing for Aesthetica, you're interested in things like human complexity or framing utopia, these kind of nice pairs of words that kind of push the writing on. Next up is After All. This is actually my favorite journal out of all of these ones. It's also the hardest one to find. After All online and journal is accessible to you via the internet. It is not one that's held in the UAW library. The reason I like it is that it's a fresh and new journal, and it often combines art history and critical theory. So it often pulls together an in-depth analysis with this kind of broader context of what's happening in the art world. I like it because it gives us a deeper read, and it sort of pushes the agenda in lots of different ways. Flash art, this has been around forever. Flash art is like one of the oldest journals. It's also still one of the coolest. So it has a great online website, really nice writing, fresh, interesting artworks, and interesting discussion. So it was established in 1967. It works often by giving profiles of artists. So a lot of leading artists, sort of their initial profiles appeared in Flash art. I like this kind of discussion of it as an international journal of European and North American. So established in Italy, this has a much more European focus, and it also has a number of articles written by curators as well as by writers. So if you're thinking of kind of continuing your curatorial voice, then Flash art might be the one for you. Oxford Art Journal. If all of this sort of contemporary stuff has felt way too much and just you don't want to go there, you just want to do a straightforward, simple, clear essay, the kind of essays that you've done before, then Oxford Art Journal is probably where you should be heading. Except you've got to remember you still have to write about contemporary art. Oxford Art Journal has been around for a long time. It's the most art history of the journals that we're talking about. But what it does that is really important is it's always political. So even if it's looking at Bruegel or if it's looking at some much older artworks, it's always looking at these in the context of visual art and material representation. So it covers the entire range of art history. It's not always contemporary art, but it does really push at the border of thinking of what is art history and how does art history work. So that might be the journal for you. If you just want to have an Australian focus, then Art in Australia is the journal for you, except you've got to think of art in Australia as two journals. There's the Art in Australia that existed until this century. It was going through numerous versions of itself through the 20th century. It was a very solid and dependable journal of art and how art was operating and working in Australia. This was remade about 5 years ago by a collaborative group of art historians in Melbourne, and it now is incredibly contemporary. So it focuses on contemporary art and its relationships to broader theoretical and geopolitical contexts. To give you a sense, this is an essay that I published on David Haynes and Joyce Hinterding's work that reflects some of the ideas I've talked about in the lectures. I published this a couple of years ago in this new version of Art in Australia. So really enabled me to kind of push the theoretical boundaries of what I was doing, but also the way I was writing. The new version of Art in Australia lets you write in a kind of a much more experimental way. So if you're wanting an experimental kind of approach to what you're doing, then say that you're writing for the new Art in Australia. If you want a solid art historical Australian art approach, then say that you're writing for the old Art in Australia. Next up, and possibly one of the most important journals on our list, is Art Asia Pacific. Really significant journal, established in 1993, covers the Asia, the Pacific, and the Middle East. Has fantastic listings of artists and articles by country. So if you're interested in pushing away from the centres, away from New York, away from Europe, and actually starting to think more broadly about art and society, then this is the journal for you. It often has broad thematic essays, so look out for those. Really fantastic writing, beautifully illustrated. The website isn't quite as wonderful as we'd want it to be, but it still works really well. And again, when I wrote for Art Asia Pacific a wee while ago now, I wrote basically an article about a single Māori artist in New Zealand. So it's that kind of deep study of one person's work. But you can see here, contemporary Indian drawing in London. It's kind of trying to push together and mesh together a number of concepts that cover this kind of broad notion of Art Asia Pacific. Okay, a few more to go. Hopefully you're starting to go, yes, okay, this journal works for me, or that one doesn't. ArtLink. What I love about ArtLink is the issues are thematic. And so if you're thinking thematically based on the way that we've run this course, go to ArtLink, look through all of the previous issues. You will find an issue about the thing that you are interested in. So this is a recent issue that they had last year, an issue they had last year on colour. ArtLink is really nicely illustrated. It was founded in Adelaide. It has this really nice kind of way of pulling together interesting ideas thematically. So for example, these are the articles that were in that colour issue. Queer uses of colour. So really shifting our idea and queering the idea of colour a long way, away from sort of another article alongside it about dyeing and how colour dyeing works in fabric and textiles practices. So all of these things kind of mush up together in ArtLink, which is what makes it so really wonderful. For an issue on this issue called Considering the Animals, I wrote an article that was very much about thinking the non-human and thinking non-human futures. In this space, it's nice to write in a way that's more conversational, more discursive, spend a lot of time describing the work and being with the work. That's what I enjoy about writing for ArtLink. Okay, next up, Eyeline. Eyeline has been around for ages. Again, it's a contemporary art magazine that comes out of Brisbane. It focuses a lot on the research that happens in the articles. So very closely researched articles that think carefully about the broader kind of critical context for the contemporary art that's happening. It's very extensive, it's very visual. It's really interested in research and pushing research. So the other thing about it is it isn't grouped thematically in quite the same way that ArtLink is. So Eyeline, you're going to get a range of ideas and a range of concepts in the one article. A little bit clunky in the online space, but usually now they're starting to release individual articles from each issue, and you can see the kinds of things that are happening in Eyeline. Okay, last one, I think. Yes, last one, Image. Image is the online journal of electronic Melbourne art journal. I think it started out to me. Online Journal of Art, comes out of Melbourne, publishes established art historians as well as postgraduate writing, publishes all sorts of kind of extensive stories, is in a way Australia's equivalent to the Oxford Art Journal. So is mostly Australian focused, but art historical focused as well, rather than art in Australia that doesn't have that art historical focus. Image has that. It's the only online refereed art history journal published in Australia. It covers all art history, as I've said, but also likes to pull things together thematically and theoretically. It's good if you're wanting to write historically, if you're wanting to write contextually, and if you like using lots of references, this is the journal for you. Okay, that's all your journals. You've got to choose one of those and pitch your essay towards them. So think about whether you want to use lots of illustrations, whether you want to use lots of references, what kind of voice you want to use. You need to pull all of those things together and choose one of these journals. If you're still stuck, remember you can go back to Gilda Williams, and we really need you to do this. You need to go back to the space of thinking, okay, what is it that I have to do? What is the title of my essay? What kinds of things can I do inside the context of this journal? Am I fulfilling the brief in that way? Okay, I think that's enough. I went fast, I went quite quickly through those journals. You can watch this again. You've got links to all of the journals on Moodle. Have a look at them online. It's going to be difficult for you to get hard copies, but a number of them, like ArtLink and Art in Australia and Eyeline, are available from the uni shop if you want to sort of feel and touch a hard copy one. But really just work with the virtual space. Think about which journal suits you, how you feel, and what you want to write about. Put those two things together and get started.